the whitewashing of God. Let's get uncomfortable. Let's talk about the most famous man in history. Go ahead. Picture him in your mind. Jesus of Nazareth, the Son of God, the Messiah. Done? I'm willing to bet good money that the man you just pictured has fair skin, long flowing brown hair, maybe a beard, and, if you were raised in a certain kind of church, piercing blue eyes. He looks gentle, serene, and above all, he looks white. He looks like a handsome European man you might see in a Swedish coffee shop. And I'm here to tell you that this image, this universally accepted portrait of Jesus Christ, is one of the most successful and insidious lies in human history. It is a work of fiction, a masterful piece of propaganda that has shaped not just religion, but the very foundations of power, race, and civilization for 2,000 years. The Jesus you picture in your head, the one hanging on church walls and printed on holy cards, is a forgery. And it's time we talked about who the real Jesus was. Because the historical Jesus, the real man from Nazareth, was about as white as I am the King of England. To understand this, we have to do something radical. Use basic history and geography. Let's take a trip back to first century Jerusalem, Galilee, and the surrounding areas of Judea. This was a crossroads of the world, a melting pot of the Middle East under the boot of the Roman Empire. The people here were Semitic. They were the ancestors of the people we see in the region today: Palestinians, Jews, Syrians, Iraqis. What did they look like? Well, they looked like people who live in a hot, arid desert climate. They had skin that was browned by the sun, ranging from olive to a deep, dark brown. They had dark, coarse hair, black or dark brown, and dark eyes. To survive in that relentless sun, their bodies produced melanin, the natural pigment that protects the skin. A pale-skinned, blue-eyed man would have been a genetic anomaly. An outsider so rare he would have been seen as a curiosity, or perhaps even divinely touched or cursed, but certainly not the norm. The idea that Jesus and his 12 disciples were a band of fair-skinned Caucasians wandering the desert is not only historically inaccurate, it is geographically and biologically absurd. So, if the real historical Jesus was a brown-skinned, dark-eyed Middle Eastern Jew, how in the world did we end up with the image of a Scandinavian supermodel? The answer lies in power, art, and the deliberate rewriting of history. For the first few centuries after his death, depictions of Jesus were varied. In the catacombs of Rome, he was sometimes shown as a classic Roman, beardless and short-haired. In Byzantine art, he took on the more somber, dark-bearded look that is still common in Eastern Orthodoxy. A look that, while stylized, was still ethnically ambiguous and closer to a Mediterranean or Middle Eastern appearance. But the real shift, the great whitewashing, happened during the European Renaissance. As Europe became the center of Christian power, its artists began to do what artists always do. They created God in their own image. They looked at the people around them and projected those features onto the divine. And no one was more influential in cementing this image than the master himself, Leonardo da Vinci. Look at his two most famous religious works. In The Last Supper, we see a room full of Italian men. Jesus and his disciples are depicted as a cohort of Europeans. Their features, skin tone, and hair all reflecting the people Da Vinci saw in 15th century Milan. His Salvator Mundi, a savior of the world, which became the most expensive painting ever sold, presents a Jesus with delicate, almost translucent fair skin, impossibly fine hair, and distinctly European features. These weren't just paintings, they were declarations. They were Europe claiming Jesus, and by extension, divinity itself, as its own. These images were reproduced, idolized, and spread across the globe through colonial expansion and missionary work, becoming the definitive, unquestioned portrait of Christ. The brown-skinned Jewish carpenter from Nazareth was erased, replaced by a white European deity. Now, I know this can be a challenging topic, and it's designed to make us think. If this content is resonating with you, I want to invite you to support the channel. Please take a second to hit the like button, as it really helps get this message out to more people. And if you haven't already, subscribe and click the notification bell so you can continue this journey with us. Now, let's get back to why this matters so much. This artistic transformation wasn't just an innocent aesthetic choice, it had profound and devastating real-world consequences, especially for people of color. The story of the great boxer Muhammad Ali illustrates this perfectly. Before he was Ali, the young Cassius Clay was a curious boy growing up in Louisville, Kentucky. One day, he went to his mother and asked a simple yet profound question. He had been looking at the religious pictures in their home and in their church, and he was confused. "Mama," he asked, "why is everything white? Why is Jesus white with blonde hair and blue eyes? And the angels, they're all white. Why are the people at the Last Supper all white? I know someday I'm going to die, and I want to know if I'm going to heaven." His mother, a devout Christian woman, told him not to worry, that he'd go to heaven. But the boy persisted. "Well, what about the angels? Are they going to be white too?" His mother didn't have an answer. Nobody did. The message the young Cassius Clay received loud and clear was that divinity was white. Heaven was white. Goodness was white. And blackness, it was, by exclusion, something else, something lesser. This moment planted a seed of righteous indignation in him that would fuel his future activism, his conversion to Islam, and his powerful stand against a system that he felt had stolen his people's divine identity. Ali's childhood question cuts to the very heart of the issue, when the ultimate symbol of goodness, sacrifice, and divinity is relentlessly portrayed as white. It creates a spiritual and psychological hierarchy. For centuries, this image was used as a tool of colonial oppression. It was easier to conquer, enslave, and civilize non-white peoples if the God you were serving looked like you and not like them. The white Jesus gave a divine stamp of approval to the idea of white supremacy. It whispered a terrible lie into the soul of the world, that God was on the side of the white man. So let's be brutally honest and put it all on the table. Jesus was a member of a community of color. He was a brown man living under a brutal white European military occupation, the Roman Empire. His people were oppressed. His message was one of liberation for the poor and the marginalized. He was a political and religious dissident who was arrested, tortured, and publicly executed by the state for challenging the status quo. Given this reality, to say Jesus was black is, in a political and social sense, far more accurate than to say he was white. He was much, much closer in lived experience and appearance to a black man in modern America or a Palestinian in the West Bank than he ever was to the fair-skinned, blue-eyed man painted by Leonardo da Vinci. The persistent, stubborn refusal to let go of the image of a white Jesus is not about historical accuracy. It is about maintaining a power structure. It is a desperate attempt to cling to a narrative that centers whiteness as the default, the divine, the norm. It is the visual manifestation of a structural racism that has poisoned our world for millennia, a racism so deep that it has dared to whitewash God himself. The real Jesus was not a member of the powerful ruling class. He was one of the oppressed, and it's about time we remembered that.